I'm Danielle Detmer with Employee Benefits, and we have a couple people here today to help you stay out of court, protect you when dealing with employees. I supervise the work comp and medical leave programs. You also might recognize my name if you've ever had a formal management referral for an employee with new directions or the random testing for your drivers. And with me today to help me present is Terry Fields, who manages the work comp program, has been doing that almost a decade. And that's supposed to mean you're very experienced. And Brian Gearing, who's been with us a little less than a year, that handles your medical leaves. And we all kind of have our specialties within benefits, so we do a lot of collaboration on special circumstances. So we have other people here to help us for the Q&A at the end. Here are some of the topics we're going to go over today. We're going to talk to you about confidentiality rules with medical records and genetic information, work comp, FMLA, leave administration, formal management referrals, better known as the EAP, and some supervisor do's and don'ts for you. HIPAA is, you might recognize this from signing different things at your doctor's office. Basically, this is an act that protects employees' medical information and also you as a patient. The main thing to remember with this is that we want to protect the confidentiality of whatever's going on with your employees. So if they're on medical leave, we really can't ask them questions about it. We can't share information or keep medical records. You want to make sure if those things are coming up that you go through Brian on those with medical leaves. And GINA is a Genetic Information Act, and where this comes into play is mainly when you're sending out condolence type messages, you want to leave out identifying information. And this protects somebody, for instance, if somebody had heart disease that ran in their family and you sent out a condolence message saying their father died of heart disease. That could hurt them with getting insurance coverage in the future, or it could have in the past. So we leave that kind of information out. And these are just things to protect you when dealing with your employees. So this is a situation to kind of illustrate that. An employee brings you a doctor's release or notes to your office or to office staff. What's the best course of action if somebody brings you a doctor's release? Do you want to post it on the bulletin board? Some of these are supposed to be kind of lighthearted. B, just direct the employee to employee benefits to take care of it. Or C, keep it in a file labeled medical in your office. You do want to go ahead and direct them to employee benefits. And this is to protect their confidentiality, but also to protect you. Sometimes employees will want to tell you all about their medical information. While you want to be empathetic and be a good listener, it's better for your protection to go ahead and refer them to employee benefits. It is up to them what they share with others, but you don't want to keep it in your office. And if you do fax anything or forward it over, you want to go ahead and shred your originals. And this is a situation to kind of illustrate GINA, or the Genetic Information Act. An employee is out on bereavement. They've lost their mother to breast cancer. You want to be able to share the loss with your staff to let them know what's going on. What's the best course of action? Send out an email soliciting donations for breast cancer research in memory of the mother, or B, to send out a condolence email omitting medical information. And that is correct. And here's an email example. You can send out a nice email, maybe give some information about the mother, just share the obituary, and leave out any information about breast cancer. Even if it's coming from a good place to protect yourself, you want to leave that information out.
We're going to talk Work Comp 101, which is the very basics of work comp, what you would need to do and don't need to do in regards to if an employee was injured at work. First of all, the employee's report of injury to a supervisor or a person in charge. That is very important that we make sure that we get that done, because I'm sure some of you had scenarios before where an employee may have been injured and came to you a few days later and reported that injury, and then you called me, and I may have had some concerns about that. We want to make sure that when an employee is injured, that they report it to their supervisor or the person in charge that day, so that we have that on record. And the next step is that we want all employees to complete an employer's report of injury form within 24 hours of an accident. Sometimes that doesn't happen always, and I know that I get some calls sometimes where people are concerned, well, they didn't report that within 24 hours. That's just a standard, that's on our form that you guys get there in your office. We do want them to report it immediately, but if they report it to us 5 days later, still give them that paperwork to report that to us, and then we'll handle that in our office, or if it's 30 days later after the incident, and then we'll take care of it for them from then on. Employees should always complete side 1 of the employee's report of incident, and I've been noticing here lately that a lot of employees that are injured are not completing the paperwork completely, and I get it sent to me, and then I have to forward it back to the supervisor or to the employee to have them complete that over again. The supervisor should complete side 2 of the form. That is very important also when they complete that form, because, again, I don't want to have to send it back out to you and delay putting the information in for the employee to get help. Third step is that we want you guys to fax ERIs to the work comp office at extension 34671 within 24 hours of completing that form. And then again, if that doesn't happen within 24 hours, you can still go ahead and send it to us later. And this is very important right here. We must have the employee call the work comp office at extension 34579 if they wish to seek medical attention. In our office, we also, after we get that report, I do send out an email to the employee, but I get several accidents on a daily basis that I may not get that email out to the employee within 24 hours or maybe even 48 hours. So if you know that an employee is injured and they need to seek medical attention, just have them call me directly that same day when they complete that form. This is the form that an employee would need to complete. Again, I want to stress, we do need the employee to call our office. I know sometimes we have staff that may call for the employee, and then I'll turn around and say, well, can I speak to that employee? But if we stress in the beginning to have the employee call me, that would help expedite their services and defendants to seek medical attention. And then again, I want to reinstate again that there is a follow-up email that I sent out to all. For every report that I get, I send out an email to that employee. And I know that some people don't check their emails regularly, and they're going to wait for me to call them. But if you can let your employees know that they will receive an email every time that they fill out that report, and if they could check their email status from my office. Within the work restrictions, we want to ensure when we determine if you can accommodate restrictions that are comparing to the job challenges for the positions. And that's that job analysis that for every job out in the district, we try to produce a job analysis. And if we look at that job analysis, when it comes to accommodations, well, the doctor may say they have a 10-pound restriction, but if we look at the job analysis to see what the restrictions is pertaining to how many hours they're lifting the 10 pounds, and we want to make sure that we check that with the doctor's restrictions, the email that I sent out to you, or the paperwork that the employee brings back to your office, that you compare that to the job analysis to make sure that we're not just saying that we can't accommodate an employee if there's reasonable accommodation for them. And also, safety is our first priority. Of course, we don't want anyone to come back to work that is not able to perform their job. We just don't want you to say, yes, they can come back to work. But if we know that they're not able to perform that job, we don't want them to come back and possibly injure themselves more. But we do know this rule to be a fact. We've done research there in our office, and we've seen that over the past 7 years, that the longer that a person is off work, the more likely he or she will not return to work. So our goal is to try to get them back to work as quickly as possible, maybe not doing what they were doing, but maybe something within those restrictions for them to come back to. Our main goal in our office and within the district is to keep employees working and engaged as long as it's safe for them to do so. And now we're going to do a couple of work comp do's and don'ts. Do have the employee call to report the injury versus another person whenever possible. I know you've probably heard me say that 3 times already, but that is something that I truly want to get out there. Have the employee call us, because I have to ask them personal questions pertaining to what happened and so forth. And also we ask them questions pertaining to their medical history so that we're able to let our doctor know what's going on in their life so that he can help them get back to work also. Do allow an employee to stop work and call to report the injury, and allow them to leave to be seen by the physician. If someone is hurt and they're telling you they need to see a doctor, please let them call our office so that we're able to get them in to see a doctor. Do accommodate restrictions whenever possible and whenever reasonable. Don't suggest possible diagnosis or conditions on an ERI. On this form right here, they're asking for the supervisor to complete this form, and sometimes in this area right here where it says supervisor's comments, I've noticed sometimes where someone may give a comment not really pertaining to what happened, but maybe what they think has happened. We want to keep this form strictly to saying what what actually happened instead of us coming up with a conclusion ourselves. Don't discuss cases with employees once they have a litigated work comp claim. That's from the advice from our attorney. We want to keep it strictly between the two attorneys to work this case out for us instead of us interacting with the employee, telling you what happened and so forth. So just direct them to talk to their lawyer in regards to their case. The first situation, an employee falls after tripping as a result of a hazard cord in the walkway. She expresses a wish to get her ankle checked out. What is the best course of action? A, send her to the nearest emergency room right away. B, tell her she needs to finish out the work day and will fill out a work report tomorrow. C, have her fill out an employee report of incident and then direct her to call the work comp office to direct medical care. Solution C, we want to direct the employee to fill out the proper paperwork, sign off on it, and ensure it's faxed to the work comp office at extension 34671. Direct the employee to contact the work comp office, me directly at extension 34579, so I can coordinate their care.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you about leave programs, personal illness, maternity leave, paternity leave, FMLA to care for a close family member, and adoptive leave. But before we get too far into this, the FMLA obviously is an abbreviation. Who can tell me right quick what that is for?
Medical Leave Act.
Thank you. Very good. Good work. But not every employee will qualify for FMLA is the other important thing to note. There's a couple criteria based on their length of service and hours worked in the 12 previous months. So just something to note there. While they may not qualify for FMLA, they may qualify for approved medical leave. So, speaking of personal illness absences, so anything more than 5 days, that's 5 business days. So once it hits day 6, we would want you to refer that employee to me so we can get the appropriate paperwork out to them and get the medical leave going on that, because we would want them to have the appropriate paperwork and also to have that release to come back to work to make sure they're safe to do so. Once the employee has 14 days, once they receive the documentation, to return that back to employee health or my office. FMLA, to care for a close family member. You're probably wondering what a close family member is, right? So per the regulation, FMLA defines that close family member as a spouse, child, or parent. So then you see there how they get paid. So after the family illness days are used, anything to care for a close family member would be protected under FMLA, but unpaid days if they have used or exhausted all their family illness time. And now we're going to talk about maternity leave. This is the one leave that we know for sure that is guaranteed all employees will be eligible for maternity leave. Doesn't matter if they're temp, non-benefited, they will. Now, it would be unpaid, of course, but they will be guaranteed that FMLA coverage. As you see there, 6 weeks off for a regular delivery, 8 weeks for a C-section. Of course, the benefited employees, this is where it talks about how they get paid. So they would get paid during that paid leave time frame, 6 or 8 weeks, depending on the delivery. If during that time they exhaust their temp leave, then it would transition over to short-term disability, and that pays, as you can see there, at 70% of their daily or hour rate. And then, in addition to that, they would be eligible for unpaid FMLA baby bonding time up to the maximum of the 12 weeks, which is what is per the regulation, what their leave entitlement is. On the leave packets, when you do have the employee reach out or the employee reaches out to employee health, we would wait until the 3rd trimester to get the paperwork out on those. And then the paperwork after delivery is due back within 2 weeks after the delivery of the baby. Typically, maternity leave would begin at birth. There are instances, of course, where they may be taken off work early, and then, of course, it would start early if that were the case. Paternity leave, you can use 3 days, paid days, to attend the birth of a child, or your child. Comes out of your temp leave bank, is coded as family illness, and then would be eligible for additional FMLA unpaid time if they're wanting to take it up to the 12 weeks that's allowed by the FMLA regulation. One thing of note there at the very last bullet, if both parents happen to be employees of the district, they have the option of splitting up that 12 weeks so they could collectively have that full time off. Paid adoptive leave. Classified employees can use 5 days per year, and that, of course, comes out of temp leave. So if their benefited employees meet the eligibility requirements, they also could be eligible to take additional unpaid days up to the 12-week mark there after the paid portion. So an employee tells you she will need to take off 6 weeks for medical reasons. So what to do? You wait for employee benefits to determine eligibility for FMLA and medical leave. Don't initiate a personnel conference to address attendance when FMLA request is pending. When in doubt, you could always check with me and see if maybe they do have any FMLA cases pending.
So this is the classified attendance standard, and this is just a reminder for you of when you can implement different things for attendance, level A and level B. This was shared, the most updated one was shared by employee relations, and a lot of times they will be involved once you get to this point, and that's one of the reasons why they're here for questions. And oftentimes, a formal management referral will come along with attendance issues for you to new directions. Just let you take a look at that. And with that referral, that's when I get involved. You give me a copy of your personnel conference and let me know somebody has attendance issues. And a lot of people are confused about why the formal management referral is needed if somebody's already missing work and then they're going to miss work more to go to an EAP provider. And the theory behind that really is to help that person find out what's going on, that they are missing work. Maybe they're eligible for FMLA and they didn't realize that, and the provider kind of directs them to that. Or maybe they're dealing with some struggles outside of work that is making them miss work, and they can try to get to the root of that issue. So that's the theory behind that. And you might feel like this little rodent sometimes. And I truly believe that is a good thing for employees. Anybody can get something out of that, having somebody listen to you. I do think it's a worthwhile service that we have. And the main reason we included that in here is so you know that with those, you're not going to really be getting a lot of private information about those appointments. You'll get really basic information that the person's complying, that they're going to the appointment, when the next appointment is scheduled. You might get some really general information. They're working through stress. They've come up with a game plan to tackle their attendance. But want to reassure the employee that their private information they decide to share at those appointments will be completely private. And once you do a formal management referral, the employee is allowed to go to those sessions during work time. We don't always know what's going on for people in their outside lives after work. So while it may be inconvenient to have them gone during the day, they are allowed to do those appointments during work time. You can ask them to schedule at a certain time of day if it eases your coverage, perhaps, do a morning appointment, or can you do one at the end of the day, and work with them on that part. But they can go to those sessions during work time. Normally, those sessions run anywhere from 3 to 6 sessions. Attendance normally doesn't run the full 6 sessions, but if they uncover some things that person really needs to work through, it may. And we kind of already covered that the information is private. And the most important thing to take away from the training so far as the formal management referral is if you know somebody does have something pending where they're going to be taking medical leave for themselves or for a family member, that wouldn't be the time to do an attendance referral. So if their leave is protected by a medical leave or an FMLA claim, those days that are protected, you couldn't hold against them for attendance. And then we have a tester knowledge area here. And we're going to start with Brian. We kind of tried to divide these up by the areas we do, and we're going to do a little Judge Judy with you here.
So when an employee returns to work unexpectedly after 2-week absence without paperwork, what do you do? A, allow the employee to return and let employee benefits know. B, send the employee to employee benefits to ensure a medical certification release has been filed prior to allowing a return to work. Or C, ask the employee for his or her medical notes. Correct. One of your workers is obviously pregnant and is always slow in completing her projects, and you have not heard anything about her planned maternity leave, what would be your best course of action? A, let her know if her projects are not completed. You may have to ask her to work while on leave. B, wait to hear from employee benefits regarding leave approval. Or C, call employee benefits and ask them to call her about her maternity leave. It actually is B on this one. C is, I think we have that happen, and it's not necessarily incorrect, but I think the first option would be B, and C is kind of a backup one, I believe.
And if I could interject, one of the reasons we choose B as the best option, we kind of got a little trouble when we went through this presentation with our superiors, like, obviously pregnant, what if she's not pregnant? So, this illustration was meant to be somebody that you know is pregnant. But if you don't really know, what if employee benefits contacts her and she's not pregnant? That's the worst feeling as a woman. So that's kind of why B is the right answer. So.
Thanks, Danielle.
Your employee was hurt at work. He does not want to fill out an EROI and said he will fill it out later if he is still in pain. A, you respect his wishes and figure he will let you know if he needs help later. B, explain accidents needs to be filed timely and you want him to fill it out for documentation purposes. C, send him to the ER to get checked out and then decide if the report is needed. You guys are good. I appreciate you. Does everybody know where to find that EROI at? The EROI can be found on OnBase.
The next one, we have a well-loved employee left the office in an ambulance. The next day, you have staff members inquiring about what happened and how this employee is doing. And what is the appropriate response? A, do you let the employee know you'll send out an all-staff email to keep everyone in the loop because you want to be an effective communicator? B, you share what happened because you know the questions are coming from a caring place, but ask the employee to keep it hush-hush. Or C, do you acknowledge the questions are coming from a caring place, but state, unfortunately, you're not at liberty to share the personal information? And C is the correct answer, and I know we're probably all guilty at one job or another of not doing C, but this is designed to help you. And just let them know, hey, I know you care, but I really don't want to share their personal information. And that's the best to protect yourself. We're going to share some supervisor do's and don'ts. You do want to report employee absences, as Brian mentioned. Once it hits the 6th day, that's when it becomes a medical leave. We need to approve the leave and also make sure they're safe enough to come back to work. You do want to verify if there are any restrictions, whether or not you can accommodate those. You do want to guard and respect privacy of your employees' personal and medical information. And as Terry reiterated, you want to complete or guide them to complete the employee report of incidents timely. And what we want to avoid is referring an employee for an EAP for attendance if they have medical leave or FMLA pending. And this is something we haven't covered yet, but we can't post a position until notified by employee benefits. And sometimes somebody goes on a medical leave, you know it's going to be a long-term leave, maybe they have cancer or something else very serious where it's going to be more than 6 months before they can come back. And it is frustrating, I'm sure, knowing that you know they're not coming back, but yet you can't fill their position. Employees are able to be off a total of 180 days or 6 months before that position becomes vacant. And that's just a district policy. There's always a window that person might be able to come back, so their position is protected in the meantime. So once they reach that 6-month mark or 180 days, we communicate with the supervisor by letting them know, yes?
If they come back for a week, is that 180 reset?
That's an interesting question, and it depends. If they come back up for a week and they go right back out on medical leave for the same reason, that 180 clock keeps ticking. If it's for a different reason, somebody was out for a knee surgery and now they have a mental health leave, the 180 clock starts over. And we're very careful to make sure if those leaves are connected or not regarding your question. Good question. Employees have responsibilities too. It's not just all about the supervisors. There's things we want to make sure they're doing for you. They need to report absences according to policy. Some people are entering their own absences. Some people have it worked out where an administrative assistant is doing it as a long-term leave, whatever you're doing within your department. It is their responsibility to provide medical certification and get us that paperwork. They have 14 days to do that from the time they tell us about a medical leave. It is their responsibility to report work injuries timely and to remain compliant with their EAP sessions. If somebody is referred for attendance, it is necessary that they comply with those, that they don't continuously miss appointments because that can be bad for them. And we're in touch with them if that happens to try to guide them in the right direction. And it is also their responsibility to return to work after medical leave and by providing a medical release so we know if they have restrictions or if they're safe to return. This is just who we are, our emails and our phone numbers. Please note I have a 1 in my email. I miss a lot of emails because there's a 1 in there. And these are our managers that you may also need, and they're here to help us with Q&A if you have any questions.
So you're out working on a job and a guy cuts his hand and it's bleeding pretty bad. I mean, it's not life threatening, but he needs 6 or 7 stitches. Can we just take him to a minor emergency room? I mean, I understand there's a process you have to go through, but can we just take him?
Let me answer that for you.
Because it happened to me and I went because I was hurting pretty bad.
Okay, sorry about that. But if you just say that a person just needs 6 or 7 stitches. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but we have offices that are open to take care of that right away. Like, we send them to Via Christi, and there's 2 other locations that we send employees to. If it's just something that needs to be stitched, I can understand if their hand is about to fall off, of course, take them. But if you think it's just stitches, please just give us a call, and you'll be able to take them right over to the doctor right away. But again, of course, if it's after hours, we have 2 locations that we send people to. It's either they're spread out. It's the Wichita, that used to be the old Wichita Clinic. It's now called Via Christi. That's located on East Murdoch, right behind Wesley Hospital. They're open until 8:30 in the evening, and we send employees there. But if it's a dire need that can't wait until the next day, of course, we send them to the ER. And we prefer that we send them to Wesley. And then give us a call back right away. And I'm sorry about your incident.
Oh, yeah, I'm better.
They take good care of you?
Yeah, I cried a little bit, but it was all right.
Okay.
I just want to ask a clarifying question to add on to his. So this might sound like a dumb question, but it did happen to an employee of mine who cut her hand and needed stitches, and she had called employee benefits, but nobody was in the office, and the phone wasn't forwarded. I think we had called 3 different people, and nobody was there. So what is the situation like if you guys are not available and there's medical attention that needs to occur?
And that should be a very rare instance. Even today, we have our phones forwarded here for an emergency. I'm Terry's backup when she's gone and when neither of us are here. Sandra often helps, Angela, but security is where I was going with my answer. Security would be who you would call if you absolutely can't get a hold of anybody live, because there will always be somebody picking up there. Right, Chuck? So you would call security, and they have information on where to direct people in an emergency like that. Because sometimes we do have injuries that happen after hours when we're not there. If somebody's working, after hours on the weekend, employee benefits isn't open, and that's who we would direct someone to call. I'm sorry that happened.
There's one other option for you. We send most of our employees over to 2535 East Lincoln. If you just go ahead and just send them over there, their staff works with us, coordinates with us. They will not see the employee, or they will see the employee, I'm sorry, and they'll give me a call. So if that's the case, if you did not get a hold of us and it's not an emergency, just send them to 2535 East Lincoln. But leave me a message and let me know that you're seeing them over there. It's Via Christi Occupational Medicine. That's only if you did not get a hold of us.
If an employee is injured and that employee requests 911, do you follow your protocols or do you call 911?
You can still call 911 if they request it.
And if they don't request it?
Yes, call 911, of course.
I noticed you mentioned FMLA can be used for family. Can it be used for the person themselves also? Does that make sense?
It can be. There are 2 different kinds of leave you could use for self, and I'll give you an example. If I have incredibly bad asthma, might not need a continuous medical leave, but maybe I have a flare-up every month that takes me out a couple days. I could have what's called intermittent FMLA, so that would be an advantage of self, versus a continuous medical leave if I had a surgery. They kind of end up intersecting, because if I have a continuous leave for a month for a surgery, I might be on a paid medical leave, but I'm also protected under FMLA perhaps. So FMLA is the protection part by law, but it isn't necessarily a paid leave. Did that answer your question? Yep. Okay.
In your slide, you said that on an EAP referral, that we're supposed to let them go during work hours. In the past, we've let them go the first time on administrative directive, but then all the other times had to be used as temporary leave. So your slide implied that we're doing it all administrative leave. Is that correct?
That is correct. It wouldn't, it's, if you have to code it when they leave, what I've been instructed to do is do like school business, because we're asking them to go. I'm not sure about the history of that since I've been doing the referrals. If they choose to go outside of work, you're not necessarily going to correct them and say, hey, you can go during work time. But if they tell you that's when I need to go because I have commitments after work, whatever those might be, we're the one mandating the referral. And I know they're the ones that got themselves into that situation, but at the same time, we're the ones mandating it. And we don't know what they have going on outside of that. So we wouldn't charge them their own leave to go to those appointments. Do you want to add to that?
A little bit. So you are correct, and they are encouraged to attend those appointments or schedule the follow-up appointments outside of normal business hours. But to be perfectly honest, when it comes push to shove and the unions get involved, it ends up that we'll cover their time during work hours, so.
Did that just change, Angela? 'Cause
It just depends on who we're dealing with.
Okay.
But you're right. I mean, that is encouraged. We encourage them to do it outside normal business hours. Be least disruptive to the class.
So maybe don't advertise that they can do that. But we've had some recent situations where the union has been involved where the person isn't going to get to those sessions if they have to go outside, and there were some legitimate things going on, and the person can be terminated if they're not compliant with those sessions. And we really want them to get the help and be successful.
I had a little bit of clarification. I think the Baxter asked that question if an employee asks for us to call 911. I know that she mentioned that it should be life-threatening, but who determines whether it's life-threatening?
The principal or whoever's on site, whoever the
So
person
then
in
what do we
charge.
tell an employee who insists that 911 be called?
Well, my guess is if the employee is speaking to you to call 911, that would be your,
I understand that, but do we
First.
tell them, no, we're not calling 911?
no, they can certainly call 911, but that doesn't mean we're going to foot the bill, I guess, is the
Okay.
bottom line on that.
All right, someone calls 911, then we need to tell them if it's not life-threatening, we can't do that, but they're welcome to.
I would never say we can't, but you can call 911, call us, and we'll help you through it. I mean, it's hard to answer that, because we'll have people call 911 because they cut their hand, for example, and need some stitches. Okay? Or we have some that, fall off a roof and have some serious potential life-threatening injuries.
I'm in dispatch. We get calls all the time that says call 911. Even here at the service center, they do not call 911.
Yeah, I know Tim Ferriss was working, he had some criteria several years ago that he gave out to supervisors on using your judgment for calling 911. So when in doubt, call 911 if you think someone's life's in danger. We'll figure out the rest later.
My contention is, I'm not a doctor, nor do I have, make determinations on, somebody who says my chest is tight or I can't breathe, and it's actually, indigestion. I don't know this.
Always call 911, and we're not here to tell you, direct your personal medical care. I think this presentation was more aimed at your average work comp injury. I tripped over a cord and my ankle hurts. I was breaking up a fight and my wrist went backward. Things that aren't life-threatening. If you're in doubt, we don't want to delay treatment and endanger someone's life. So by all means, if you think somebody's having a heart attack, call 911.
I fell down the stairs and my leg is the opposite way.
Call 911.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that if it's a life, limb, or eyesight type thing, call 911. Does that make sense? So if there's someone that gets their arm chopped off, that's the limb. So therefore, let's call 911 type deal, right? Finger, that would be a limb. It'd be just like in the military with 9-line medevac type stuff. Life, limb, eyesight, priority 1, go.
Yeah, I think our main thing is we want people to get care. We want to direct it quickly. The quicker we get somebody in, the faster they're going to get better. We don't want to endanger anyone by any means, so.
Going back to medical leave, if somebody is out, say they had a surgery, and they had a project at work that had a deadline, would it be inappropriate for their supervisor to call them at home just so that they can find out information that they could complete that project so they could get it done on time? Would that be inappropriate?
Probably.
Okay.
We do tell people that they are not allowed to work while on an approved medical leave. And there's a twofold reason for that. One is if somebody's sick enough they can't be at work, we really want them to be recuperating and resting. The other part of that is even if they act like they don't mind helping or doing work, they might mind later. And that's a protection for you.
Saying that they're coming back or doing the work themselves, that if they could give that supervisor the update on where they're at, so that supervisor may have another person, or they can complete that project themselves so that they can get that done in time, that project.
Our employee relations men are echoing no in my ear. So the answer is no. The most we've ever been able to do in a situation like that is if we know somebody's on a long-term leave and there's something we need in their filing cabinet and we don't know where their keys are, or something like that, the supervisor's contacted Brian or me, and we've tried to find out as we're doing medical leave updates with them, hey, do you know where your keys are? Your principal needs those. So we can ask really general questions like that, but the answer to your question would be no, unfortunately.
In reference to the doctor's notes, when someone would bring notes in for restrictions, I'd always put it in their folder. So that is to not happen, is that correct?
That's correct, and I understand why you're doing that because it gives you a timeline and you can remember things, but it could be viewed as collecting medical information on them. So once you're done with it, you want to let employee benefits kind of track that. And if you do have questions or need a memory recollection, we keep claims where we can always look that up for you. So you'd want to just go ahead and forward that on.
So how do you know what the restrictions are?
We tell you what the restrictions are in an email when they come back. Typically when somebody comes back, if they have restrictions, whether it be on the work comp or medical leave side, we'll email the supervisor and ask if they can accommodate those. If the supervisor says, yes, I can, that's all kind of recorded in an email. If you ever forget what the restrictions are, we'll be able to tell you.
Should we get rid of the emails also? Like for instance, an old injury, job injury, whatever. Sometimes I save the emails.
Keith says save it on a file on the computer, so that would be different than keeping a paper file, I guess.
Okay, that's what I do. That's
Okay.
what I do. Okay.
Employees get 6 free voluntary EAP referrals. Am I correct on that, the amount?
Any employee, if you do a self-referral, if I'm feeling anxious and I want to talk to somebody about it, I can call myself, do a self-referral. It's completely confidential. No one knows about it. And I will get 6 free sessions. If I need more sessions because now I'm experiencing something else other than anxiety, maybe a parenting concern, I can call back and say, I have a new issue. I need 6 more sessions. So it's really 6 sessions per issue. So you can really prolong that if you have multiple things going on in your life. So good question.
So follow up on that. Do we suggest that they try to take those off work hours if possible, but we allow it if not?
With a self-referral, that's completely on the employee. So if I do a self-referral today, that's on me. I'm not going to get free work time to go to those. I'm going to use my personal illness, or I'm going to make those appointments after work. Mandated referrals or the formal management referrals that we were talking about earlier is a different scenario because I'm being told to go. So there is a difference between the two. Good question. Per issue. So, for example, personally, I've had a child go and he's attended well more than 6 sessions. So, and that's completely free. So it's 6 sessions per person in your immediate household per issue. So it's a great service that's probably underutilized. I think people forget that it's there. Because now with the insurance, if you don't do the EAP, I think it's $50 for a specialist. So it's a really great service.
as we were preparing another presentation, their website, they have a lot of things to offer. So it's not just, you know, you're mandated to go or it's mental health issues. They have a lot of different things that you could look at that could potentially help you or a family member. So be good to check that out.
Terry had something she wanted to remind on work comp so far as job coding.
I know sometimes we have issues with coding absences for doctor's appointments. I know I receive a lot of emails, not a phone calls, how to code that. That is coded, if they have a doctor's appointment, that is coded under job injury, 2 hours. And then I may get a follow-up email that says that appointment took more than 2 hours. We still code that as job injury 2 hours regardless, because sometimes if they go see a specialist, they may be there a lot longer, or if they have to get an MRI treatment, that's going to take a lot longer. So just code it as JI2, and if in doubt, just give me a call.
Looks like the questions are gone. You had a lot of good questions. We appreciate you coming and hearing us, and it's nice to answer your questions. And if you have any follow-up questions that you think about later, feel free to reach out to any of us by phone or email. Thank you.